Welcome to my second 2020-2021 overlook at things. So what I used to do on the channel was I would do the how good is it, how bad is it, where we would look at how good it was with certain teams, how bad it was with certain teams, and try to schedule, figure out the way forward. And then I would do the actual season previews late in the summer when we got to close to the regular season. Because of the squashed off season that's projected to happen, I am doing the kind of both of them as one. So I'm kind of squashing it into the same. Because really, if we're talking about how things are with the Rangers, they're pretty good. So the sting of losing in the play-in round to Carolina in three straight is gone. Carolina is also gone from the playoff picture, so Ranger fans aren't worried about them going on a run. And yet it kind of illustrates the Rangers when they were hot this year, they were fantastic, and when they were cold, they looked lost. So the GM, Jeff Gorton, he's done a good job of replenishing the cupboard, a pretty bare cupboard when it came to prospects not that long ago. Coach David Quinn, pretty safe, I would think, behind the bench, but it may very well be a short leash to start next season. And the expectations are going to rise. These guys won the draft lottery. And so, with them winning the draft lottery, the expectations are going to be pretty high. They're not taking Byfield. I've seen people saying, "Oh well, Byfield should be number one." Look, every year we do this. Every year we have the number one draft pick, and every year it's so this guy's number one draft pick, or is he? Because number two's pretty good. Yeah, number two's going to be great too, but yeah, it's Lafreniere, and it would be an absolute shock if the Rangers didn't take Lafreniere. Byfield's going to be great, but you take Lafreniere. Scouting reports all say it's Lafreniere all day. So the top six projected, again with the stars are on Lafreniere. He would join a top six projected as Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, Kakko, and I have Strome still in the top six. But Strome, his contract's up this summer. Could it be possible, Jeff Gorton says, we've got Lafreniere coming in. If Strome wants a whole bunch of money, we might be better off to let him walk and take that chance. Panarin looked great. I understand Zibanejad and Strome, and there's great chemistry in there. But again, you're trying to make sure that you're not going to run into cap problems later. And it's all dependent on how much Strome is looking to make because they're going to have to pay Kakko and Lafreniere at the end of those contracts. Kakko, as much as losing in three straight to Carolina might hurt, the reality is Kakko was excellent in that round against Carolina, while a lot of the other players were kind of sort of invisible. He wasn't. And then you've got others that could end up in the top six. Buchnevich, of course, is the obvious one. Fast, who's UFA this summer, it's unlikely that Jesper Fast is going to get in there, but I had to throw him on the board. Hedel and Kravtsov are the interesting ones. So if Vitaly Kravtsov is ready, he might push his way into that top six. And again, that would seem to indicate Strome would probably be the odd man out. They're not going to lose Panarin, obviously. Zibanejad? Nope. Kreider? They just signed him for another 7 years. Kakko? Maybe you leave him further down the roster, but I think he's shown he's ready for a greater role. And then, of course, you got Lafreniere coming in. He's not coming in to play fourth line minutes. Can't see that. So, yeah, that's going to be an interesting one to see what happens. And, of course, there's Elias Anderson, who isn't coming back to the Rangers, and he's on the board in blue because what are they going to do with him? So each team I'm going to try to come up with a player where I'm going, and what's going to happen here? So, spoiler alert, when I get to the Oilers, it's going to be Puljujarvi I have on the board. The blue line is good, and I'm not sure how good. So you've got Trouba, DeAngelo, Fox, and Stahl as projected top four. And again, you've got... and I'm just leaving that as the top four. There are others that you may consider to be, good defensemen, but that's likely your top four. But I do wonder with DeAngelo. So Tony DeAngelo is a guy who seems to have detractors. Those detractors may very well look at what happened against Carolina and say, see, can't rely on him in the big games. And then there are those as well, myself included, that say, man, he was fantastic offensively at points this year. I don't know how you let him go. But how much he ends up being worth may be part of the problem with New York. And then there's K-Andre Miller coming in. And K-Andre Miller, it sounds like, could very well end up pushing his way into that top four. So there's an interesting situation brewing with the New York Rangers if Keandre Miller does come in ready to make top four. Because I don't think Stahl's going anywhere. Trouba's clearly not going anywhere. And Fox isn't going anywhere. So that would leave D'Angelo as the one that potentially ends up getting moved. Just simple math. Top two goaltenders. You got Shesterkin, you've got Georgiev. Now, Georgiev's a restricted free agent this summer. And, of course, that leaves in magenta here Lundqvist, which is weird, right? Apparently, they've already had a discussion with Lundqvist. I'm thinking that discussion's along the same lines as the discussion Florida had last year with Luongo, which is might be better if we find a way for you to make an exit. Thanks for your service. You've been fantastic. You're going to the Hall of Fame. We're heading in another direction. And Shesterkin showed he is the future in net. So it's a small sample size for Shesterkin, but we also saw this year during the regular season Georgiev's not a bad goaltender himself. So there are a couple of very good options there. There were, of course, rumors during the year that Georgiev might be the third guy. He might be on his way out. Lundqvist sticks around as the backup to Shesterkin next year. We'll see what Jeff Gorton does. Again, if they could get Lundqvist's money off their cap and move on from that contract, then they have more than $13.5 million in cap space. That's the other thing. This is a team that, much like Winnipeg, who I talked about earlier today, they have a lot of cap space. Now, it's going to get eaten up a bit. Their UFAs are Fast and McKegg. They're not going to make the big money. But their RFAs, you've got Strome, big money for Strome. Brendan Lemieux, who was obviously suspended at the start of the play-ins. And when he came back, it didn't make the difference that I thought he could make a difference for the positive. Lemieux's still a work in progress. I still think the offensive upside is very well likely there, but we'll see, right? Di Giuseppe is an RFA as well. D'Angelo, as mentioned, how much is he going to cost? And Georgiev. And again, for D'Angelo, it's what kind of contract is he looking for? And if it's a lot of money over a long period, I would think the Rangers move on. And if you're D'Angelo, you have every right to ask for a lot of money over a longer period because you've proven 2 years in a row right now that you can put up points at the NHL level. And if you don't like D'Angelo off the ice, that's fine. But what he does on the ice, somebody will pick up that contract and pay him. Somebody will pick up the RFA player. And if whether it's a sign-in trade, like, they could talk to the Rangers and say, hey, we'll give you this in trade, but we have to negotiate a contract with him first. Or whether he gets traded and they figure out the negotiations later, we'll see. But I would think there may very well be listening parties with the New York Rangers if it comes to the idea of trading D'Angelo. Again, because just purely from a financial standpoint, they're going to have to pay Fox. Fox is going to make a lot of money. Trouba already makes a lot of money. Keandre Miller, if he's as good as is advertised, he's going to be making a lot of money too. You got to look at the long term. Especially with a flat salary cap for the next potentially 3 or 4 years, you have to look at the long term. Shesterkin's going to need to get a raise as well. So Georgiev, I think he should be a relatively cheap contract for next year. We'll see. But the Rangers, there's a lot to like here. It's a similar story to the Winnipeg Jets story, except they're kind of set on the blue line. Ironically, after dealing with the Jets and picking up Trouba, but while the forward group is young, coming together, this team I think can contend not just for the playoffs, which is where I think the Jets are probably borderline playoffs. I really think the Rangers could make some serious noise next year. A lot of things have to fall their way, but I really think they could do it. As I said, with the $13.5 million in cap space, they could always bring in another defenseman if need be for a 5-6 spot, maybe a fill-in at in top 4 if need be later on. But I think they're gonna hold on to that cap space for a while because of some of the younger players coming up that are gonna need a lot of money. They do have the number 1 pick, as I said. I figure that's Lafreniere. You plug him into the top 6. They also have the number 23 pick from the Carolina Hurricanes. Again, this is a deep draft. Whoever you get at 23 probably doesn't play this year. I would think you add another forward. I would think probably another forward at 23. And then they have picks at 72 and 86. So they have 4 draft picks in the first 3 rounds this year. That's pretty good for a team that it looks like is coming out of their retooling process. There's a lot to like with the New York Rangers. Will David Quinn be the guy that sees them through next season? What kind of short leash might he be on next year? It'll be interesting to see. Because if Lafreniere gets off to a slow start, if Kakko has any struggles as well, and if this team's kind of mediocre, the first thing you do is say, all right, well, we'll look behind the bench and see if maybe that's where we need to make a change. So pressure's going to be on Quinn, but I like the future for the Rangers. I do. I think this is going to be a fun team to watch. Carolina took them out in 3. We'll see if next year helps. So let me know your thoughts. If you're a Rangers fan, how optimistic are you? What line do you think Lafreniere ends up playing on? Do you throw him on the first line right out of the gate, or do you throw him on the second? Do you throw him on the third? Does he have a season like what Kakko just had, or does he end up being an impact player immediately and put up a ton of points? Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.